Good evening. You're watching The Boom Show. My name is Kafui Day. Welcome. Who's our guest tonight? He's a human rights lawyer, and he said he did some writing in the past. He's been to Gambia twice to investigate attacks on journalists and to find out what happened to those 42 Ghanaians who were killed. He also represented the president in the 2020 election petition. My guest will be revealed right after this. Welcome to The Boom Show, and we'll see you right after this break. You're watching The Boom Show, celebrating legends of journalism. The Boom Show is brought to you in partnership with the Center for Communication and Culture, and we're supported by the Ghana Journalists Association, the Private Newspaper and Online Publishers Association, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and the Institute of Public Relations in Ghana. My guest is lawyer and human rights activist Akoto Ampaw. Good to have you here on The Boom Show. You're welcome.
It's my pleasure.
People know you for what you do in the world of law and human rights, but you were also quite a very active sportsman back in your school days.
I definitely was.
Tell us what you did.
I was a footballer. I captained the university team for a couple of years.
Not just a whole team?
No.
Okay.
I was an athlete. I did 800 and the mile, 1,500. I was also involved in cross country. I played table tennis for the university as a basketball player also.
This is a wide range of sports. Where did you get all this sporting DNA from?
Well, I just enjoy sports.
In your family, nobody was a keen sports person?
Oh, my kid brother was also a great table tennis player. And another of my brothers was a very good footballer, you know.
What was it like?
But I played even in the Premier League whilst I was in the university.
For real?
Oh, yeah.
Which team did you play for?
Volta United.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. This is what position? I'm just curious. What position?
Midfield 6 or 8.
I think I should have guessed it, because if you say you're an 800 and 1,500, you have lots of stamina to move around in the midfield.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what was it like in the university? I mean, as somebody who's an athlete, but also in student politics.
Yeah, I was a very active student politician at that time, you know, and we had some great days, great times, and also we had some confrontations with the police and sometimes even the military.
Where did you go to university? Which hall were you in?
I was in Saba Hall, University of Ghana.
The trend of confrontations with the police is almost everybody who goes to University of Ghana has at least 1 year where this thing happened. Why do you think this is coming from?
Because students are by nature rebellious, young and rebellious, and when you come to the university you enjoy a scope of freedom that you don't normally enjoy elsewhere. And from their education you begin to become sensitive to the problems of society, and also the rather authoritarian culture of administration in the university. So all these things, together with the poor performance of our governments, lead students to protest. You know, maybe a protest against the government of the day or against some, you know, arbitrary action by the university authorities.
If you look at what's happening to these days, and what comes to mind are the disturbances in KNUST and University of Ghana recently, you think things have taken a turn for the worse?
I don't know the details, but it appears to be the case. And it may also have something to do with just the pressures of this current period, you know. But I think generally the student movement has become infected badly with partisan politics. partisan politics, unlike what it was during our time. Maybe during our time, the parties didn't have the opportunity to grow, so we didn't experience that intense interest of the parties in student politics to the point where they sponsor and organize, various groups in the student movement for elections and so on. So that's a big problem now, which creates division in the student movement that deflects its attention and interest from national issues, and that lead them to be divided on party political lines. And I think that that's very, very unfortunate.
If you had the power, would you restrict political activity on campus?
I don't think that it would be proper to restrict political activities on campus. But I think the students themselves ought to be matured enough to know that as students, they have interests that are beyond party political interests.
This show, the tagline is celebrating legends in journalism. Would you consider yourself a friend of journalists?
Oh yes, definitely, I would. I very strongly believe in media freedom. It's important for the development of our society, for the protection of rights, and for the affirmation of our autonomy as individuals.
Why is that so critical? Why is that so important to you?
Because without that, you expose society to the rule of tyrants and oppressive governments. The media has a major, major role in putting a check to governmental abuses. And as we know, once you are in power, the tendency to impose yourself in an arbitrary manner on the rest of society is very great. And you need some checks. One of the most important checks in modern society to tyrannical rule is a free media. And that is one of the major reasons why I have been an active advocate for media freedom in Ghana.
I hear a few people of the older generation who lament the excessive freedom. They think that people are too free to just talk anyhow, and we are stretching, some of our colleagues are stretching the limits, stretching the boundaries of press freedom too far. Do you agree with that?
No, I disagree completely. There may be excesses in the exercise of their rights, but I do not accept the viewpoint that there's too much freedom. People exercise their right of free expression within the boundaries of the law. And therefore, and also based on a certain informed ethical value that media practitioners must promote, must believe in and adhere to. So where you have a situation where you have a media house that opens its medium to the public to say anything and everything that they want to say, and the moderator does not step in, the problem is not too much freedom, but poor journalism. And one of the things that have struck me so directly in the media in Ghana today is that when media houses open their airwaves to know what the public think about anything, they just open the airwaves and they allow the person, the citizen, to say any and everything, no matter how offended, and almost to a fault. The person moderating the program doesn't ask a single question to test some of the rather ridiculous things that they say and believe in. They don't ask a question to check them. And I think that this is a this is part of the problem that we have. Our moderators do not ask critical questions of people whose view they want to have. And secondly, a major part is that the politicians have again invaded the media space. They own many of the stations now. Maybe 30 to 40% of the stations are owned by political persons, and therefore they use them to advance their political interests and so on. And that, I think, is part of the major problem that we have. So I do not think that there's too much freedom, but we have problems in the media landscape, which we need to address.
So the moderators need to practice better journalism to check and verify some of these claims that people make. And there's an excessive influence of politics in the ownership of media houses.
Absolutely.
Do you see that getting worse?
Sure. Until and unless we pass laws that put a limit to that or protect us from the domination of political parties, we are not going to get anywhere. The problem, however, is that it is the same political parties that are in power, in parliament, and they are not in a hurry to see the right thing done. So we have a broadcasting bill that has been lying on the table, from one government to the other. Any new government that comes makes some knee-jerk, initiatives, and then we forget about it. Because that bill has some really important regulatory provisions.
Like
not allowing political parties or party political persons to own media houses, so as to provide some sanity on the media landscape.
What can civil society do?
Also, very importantly, giving the National Media Commission the authority to grant, authorization for broadcasting, and not the ministry. Is it the Communications Ministry?
Ministry, yeah.
And this is a fundamental constitutional matter, because the Constitution states very clearly that the state shall not be involved in the control or management of media houses. So if you have a situation where it is the National Communication Ministry or its agency, the National, what is it called?
Media Communications Authority?
The National Communications Authority that is granting, authorization for media broadcast. It is a direct contravention of the constitutional provision. But 20, 30 years into the third or the fourth republic, we still have that because the politicians don't want to do the right thing.
What can civil society do?
Well, it seems to me that what we really want to see is to have an alliance between civil society and the National Media Commission to fight this matter through, so that the National Media Commission, which is a very unique constitutional body because it is made up of a representation from different sectors of our society, and therefore governments find it relatively difficult to control. If we do that, then we may wrestle the power to authorize broadcasting from the hands of the National Communications Authority. Nobody is challenging the jurisdiction of the National Communications Authority over the technical aspects of the media, no. But in terms of the authorization for broadcasting, it should never be in the domain of the National Communications Authority, because that's a complete violation of the constitutional prohibition of governmental control of the media.
You're not only a friend of the media, but you're also a journalist and a human rights activist. Which came first? The journalist, sorry, a lawyer and a human rights activist. Which one came first?
It's difficult. I think they go together.
Go together?
Yeah, you know.
Okay.
And well, I mean, around the late 1970s, a couple of friends who shared the same political views about the future of Ghana and Africa, we got together and we started a publication called Direction, which subsequently became the mouthpiece of the New Democratic Movement, a political organization, not a party, a mass political organization that we set up.
What's the difference?
What's the difference?
Between an organization and a party?
A party has a very specific objective of winning political power. A political organization does not necessarily have that objective, but it may definitely have political objectives.
So Fix the Country is like an organization?
Yes.
Okay. As opposed to any of the other parties? Okay, so you set up Direction?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was the editor of Direction, and then subsequently, when things became very tough in Ghana and for media freedom, I used to write to West African magazine, you know.
My
pseudonym.
Okay, what was your pseudonym?
No, it's okay. You don't need to know.
No, but the paper is defunct now. It's just for historical purposes. So I'm going to read the articles.
What's it called? Kofi Baboni.
That was you?
Yes.
Okay, I do remember reading articles about Kofi Baboni. Why did you choose that name? Are you born on a Friday?
No, I'm not.
Why did you choose Kofi Baboni? Kofi Baboni in English means Kofi the bad boy. Okay.
But when I was a kid, there was a popular film that is it GBC or they go around showing, and it has something to do with one Kofi Baboni, and I just love the character.
Did the articles get you into trouble?
No, nobody knew who was writing them.
Okay, yeah. But did any of your writing in Ghana put you in problems with the government?
Oh, well, I suppose, for instance, when the executions occurred.
In 79?
Yes.
Okay.
We were maybe on the left about the only paper that condemned it very strongly, you know, as that not being the way for us to go. And then again, when the judges were murdered, that is the New Democratic, we were about the very first that took a position against it.
The judges and the army officer?
Yes, yes.
Did you have any consequences of taking that position?
Well, I had the sense that the government of the day was not very happy with that position, and it was part of the many things that led to a head-on collision subsequently.
Okay. And then describe that collision. Who caused it?
Oh, who caused it? I think the government of the day caused it by its repressive tactics and its unwillingness to allow space for the expression of rights by Ghanaians.
This is the PNDC government?
Yes.
Headed by Chairman Rawlings back then?
Yes.
Okay. How did it affect you?
No. For instance, I was banned from entering in any educational institution in Ghana at one stage. Public broadcast banning me from entering any educational institution. I got arrested couple of times, and then I was detained twice, one for 3 months, and on the second occasion for a little over 2 years, you know, in Asha Fort, and then James Fort, and then Tamale prisons.
Tell us about why they didn't want you to go to the schools. Were you a Pied Piper person going to lead the children out to...
It had something to do with a presentation I made on the invitation of the Ghana National Union of Ghana Students in Legon as to the new education policy that they were trying to introduce on the advice of the World Bank, which sought to run down the importance of tertiary education and to suggest that, you know, developing countries should focus more on
TVET? Technical education?
Secondary school and that level of education, you know. And then after that, there was a forum organized at Job 600, which was to discuss this new policy in the 70s that they were changing from the old policy to the new policy for primaries and I went there, of course, and intervened. I don't think to the liking of the government, and it had a lot of support from the student movement. So I think it was a combination of those factors that at one stage led to this announcement.
So this was in the late 70s?
Yes.
That you couldn't go to schools?
Yes, this was in the 80s, early 80s,
yeah,
yes.
With PNDC time.
Yes.
So you were banned from going to schools?
They said I was banned.
Did you go? Did you flout the ban?
I don't know about that. But what is certain was that not too long after that, they invited me to the Nima police station, questioned me for some time, said I should go and come back. And then I went a couple of times, and then there was nothing to be done. And then within a month or so thereafter, they did the first arrest.
And that sent you to prison for 3 months?
Yes.
Where?
They first took us, I think all of us, maybe. They first took us to Usher Fort prison.
Who is us?
Myself, Kwesi Pratt, Kweku Baku, a colleague of mine called Kung Fu, another one called Ras Kugbe, who's died now. I think that was a team.
Okay.
And then from Usher Fort, they sent us to different parts of Ghana. I went to Tamale. Kwesi went to Navrongo, and so on, you know.
What was your worst day in prison?
Worst day? I would not recall. Maybe, I don't know whether there was an occasion where somebody was taken for execution. I'm not very sure. But if that occurred, then that must have been my worst day. But otherwise, there are these occasional moments where prisoners are brutalized by the prison officers for some misconduct or the other, and it was really terrible.
Did you suffer that kind of brutalization?
No.
No, you didn't. How did you find moments? Were there moments of happiness inside prison, strange as it may seem?
Well, when you are able to help somebody who's in need, of course, you feel good. And I used the time reading. I was allowed access to books, so I used the occasion to educate myself some more.
I heard that you started learning French in prison.
No, I didn't start learning French. I did French.
Or you brushed up?
I was trying to brush up my French.
Who were you practicing with?
Oh, I was just reading. Not,
okay, all right.
And but it didn't go very far.
Was it just to pass away the time, or you had some strategic reason for brushing up your French?
No, I thought knowing how to speak French was an important asset.
Do you think, I mean, has it helped you in your work?
No, I've not really mastered it. So, you know, although I can understand and read
Yeah.
French, you know, I don't think that I can call myself proficient in French.
And then you spent a 2-year stint in prison.
Yeah,
2 years.
A little over 2 years. That was the second time, I think, in '87. I was arrested. That time, it was Kwame Kakari, Yao Graham, Inde Bugri, Kwesi Pratt, myself. Yep, I think, if I'm not mistaken, those were the...
What surprised you about prison?
Surprised me.
Yeah.
Well, I took the view, like most of my colleagues in the New Democratic Movement, that given the political stance we are taking by the mid-'80s about the PNDC and the need to return the country to political,
Civilian rule?
Yeah, civilian democratic rule. We were likely to run into a collusion with the government of the day, with the consequences of imprisonment and the stuff. And at one stage, things were so bad that we even thought of leaving the country. But we decided against it eventually and took the position that we'll face whatever consequences there may be for our actions.
Were you allowed visitors when you were in prison for 2 years?
Yes.
Okay. Did they come? Did you have people? Were you expecting certain people to visit you who never came to visit you?
I really wasn't expecting people to come and visit me, you know. So that was not the important thing. At least my family came to visit me. They brought me my needs every day on a regular basis. So that was it.
What are your thoughts of the Ghana prison system?
It's hell. And you know, one of the things about prison is that it is totally hidden from society. Society continues without any reference to what goes on in prison, because it's like they are half dead people. And I suppose it is true that one of the marks of a civilized society has to do with how it treats its prisoners. And I can say from my own experience that our prisoners are treated like inhuman people, non-humans, you know. And unfortunately, the political class is not interested in any serious prison reform. Of course, you need to recognize that when they superintend an economy that has barely enough to feed even those who are working, you can hardly expect them to be concerned about the welfare of prisoners.
And so you think are you hopeful that things will change for the better?
What?
For prisons, for people in the prison system?
Well,
not just the prisoners, but the warders as well, and everybody in that whole system.
Well, it depends on the will of the people of Ghana. At the moment, I think that the will is very weak. We've allowed two parties to dominate our lives, politically, socially, and economically. And I don't think that the dividends are anything to talk about. And the trajectory, as I see it now, is going downwards until our people begin to assert their rights in organized fashion, you know, not in unruly fashion, but in organized and purposeful fashion. People must begin to have belief in themselves as agents of change and organize to make our parties accountable to us. As things are now, they are not. The two main parties are not accountable to the people of Ghana. I don't think so.
What's the solution?
Solution?
Yes, you think could there be a third force? Or you are hoping more for like reform from within the parties?
Well, as I sit here now, I do not see in the immediate or even medium future any significant internal reform coming from within the party. Because largely these parties have become instruments of self-aggrandizement. You know, people join the parties not because they believe in any ideals or anything of the sort, but because they see it as a route of making it in life, you know. And the manner in which the parties are financed, the patronage within the parties are such that it ain't going to change much. Even if you brought Jesus Christ to run the parties as we have it now, he cannot be successful.
He'd go back to heaven and say, no, I can't.
No, he can't.
We're watching GTV, and this is the Boom Show. My guest is Akoto Ampaw.
So financing of parties is a key factor.
How they're funded.
And how that financing is monitored. The EC has not been able to do that because it is part of a political elite consensus. So it's a huge problem that Ghana faces. The parties themselves will not change it. It is the people who need to see its importance and compel change to happen.
When we return from this break, we'll talk about those people Mr. Akoto Ampaw has been talking about and how at one point in Ghana's history, they organized to try and change a system. You stay with us. This is The Boom Show. My name is Kafui Day. Back after this.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced super...
You are watching The Boom Show, brought to you in partnership with the Center for Communication and Culture and supported by the GJA, the Private Newspaper and Online Publishers Association, GIBA, and the Institute of Public Relations in Ghana. My guest is lawyer and human rights activist Akoto Ampaw. So many years ago, you were part of people who were organized to protest on the streets against VAT. And these were the Kume Preko demonstrations. Looking back at what happened back then, do you think it was successful?
I think it was very successful. It was very successful in the sense that it demonstrated in a practical way the power of ordinary people if they woke up and organized. It also demonstrated that the PNDC that at that time had transformed itself into NDC was not invincible. And it seems to me that it created the background for the election of President Kufuor in 2000. So I think it was a very important phase of the struggle of Ghanaian people.
What do you regret about the demonstrations?
Oh, the murders. The murders that occurred during the course of the demonstrations, and in respect of which the perpetrators have to date not been brought to book. I think that, including a very young 11-year-old student who was coming from school and ran into the thing, and he was shot dead.
It was a hunger, I believe.
Yes. That was terrible.
Do you feel responsible for those deaths?
Of course not. The government of the day and its hirelings were those who are to be held responsible.
But the argument will also be that you organize the people, so you must bear some responsibility.
No. It was a peaceful demonstration, and the Constitution affirms the right to demonstrate. So it could not have been our responsibility that people got killed. If we were engaged in violent demonstration and something happened, yes. But there's the responsibility laid squarely with the government of the day and its hirelings.
Why hasn't anybody been brought to book yet?
Well, that's a big question. It has to do with the independence of the police, the pressure on the police and other investigative bodies by the government of the day, which has been a continuing feature of Ghanaian public life from independence till now. Our police has not been able to assert its autonomy. And anyone who tries to do that would find him or herself thrown out or suppressed forever without any promotion. So that's a huge problem, another huge problem, in terms of rule of law and enforcement of the law, that our police are not autonomous. They don't have the strength or capability to act independently if it is to go against the government of the day or any powerful person.
I know you do not speak for this particular administration, neither did you speak for Mr. Kufuor's administration, but in their times, in Mr. Kufuor's time and in this current time where we have an NPP government, is it not surprising that they couldn't reopen this case and find the people who killed, as you say, you allege, the members of these demonstrating groups?
I think it's most unfortunate, though. I think it's very, very unfortunate.
Would you hit the streets and demonstrate against any issues today?
Why not? Indeed, come next week, we are picketing at the Auditor General office in respect of his unconstitutional refusal to surcharge people who ought to be surcharged, So my commitment is to the ideals I believe in, Ghana and its constitution.
So when you say we are hitting the streets, who's the we?
The Citizens Coalition. Recently there was a Citizens Coalition for Accountability and Transparency in Governance. So we had written to the Auditor General for a meeting with him. He ignored us. We asked that he should surcharge persons that he himself, his report, has found culpable. Nothing is heard from him. And this is an affront to the people of Ghana because he's not there on his own steam. He's there to provide public service in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of Ghana. So we want to show him that he cannot act as a king. He's accountable to the people of Ghana. And he's under an obligation to comply with law. That's something that people in authority in Ghana do not understand.
So we should expect to see you on the streets?
No, I'll definitely be there.
I'm just curious about your political philosophy. Do you have one?
a socialist by conviction. It doesn't mean that I'm somebody who is asking for socialism in Ghana today. Those are two different things. But I think that in the long run, unless the world is foolish enough to destroy itself through a climate catastrophe or a nuclear catastrophe, capitalism will give way to socialist society necessarily. Because as we develop, it is becoming more and more apparent how wasteful and unfair capitalist production is. For instance, over $1 trillion of food that is produced today go to waste. And part of it is because they can't find people to buy it at the price available. The waste of food, the food that is destroyed in Western Europe and America, amounts to as much as all the food that is produced in Sub-Saharan Africa. In the US, 1% of the population owns as much as the remaining 99% of the population. You have a system where you have a crisis of overproduction. Can you understand that?
They're producing too much.
How can you have a crisis of overproduction when there's hunger? You know.
So distribution issues.
Yeah. So it's a system of ownership that plays out the distribution.
And you think socialism is the panacea?
So I'm saying that this mad system where 1% in the US own as much as all the remaining 99% and is seen as normal. It's a crazy system. It will necessarily come to an end.
The figures may probably be the same in Ghana as well. Well, a few people own a lot of the resources.
Precisely. It's the same system. And I'm saying that more and more the world would resist this system. And it is true that the first attempt at socialist construction in the Soviet Union historically has failed. But why should it surprise us? Because this is an attempt to establish a society, a very unique, equitable, and rights-driven society. So its first attempt, like any first attempt, the first attempt to make a car or to make a plane may fail. It doesn't mean that there's nothing in there.
Where is it working? Where is socialism working?
No, but that's the point I'm not saying.
Around the world.
No, it's nowhere. Is
not Bolivia?
Bolivia. No.
It's not Cuba?
No. You know. So I'm saying that attempt, part of the problem was that it emerged in a relatively backward Soviet Russia. They had serious economic challenges, and in trying to respond to those challenges, they adopted authoritarian methods.
Okay.
A third and very important factor that people do not take into account was that the Western developed capitalist world did everything to make sure that that experiment did not succeed. And in Winston Churchill's own words, the West needed to impose an iron curtain on the Soviet Union so that it is throttled. So I'm saying that just as some of the anyone who knows histories in the late Middle Ages, in the city-states like Florence and Venice, capitalist, systems grew, and yet because of the surrounding feudal system in the whole of Europe, they collapse. So it is not, I don't think that historically it's surprising that the Soviet Union didn't succeed, but it is not an answer. Their failure to make socialism succeed is not a validation of capitalism, in my view.
So you think, briefly before we go to for the testimonial, that at some point in time, capitalism will have to collapse for socialism to take over? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that unless human beings are not humans, this system of oppression will be resisted and changed. And that change can only lead to socialism.
Will it be a violent change?
But very importantly, I think serious socialists must recognize that there are some important values in civil liberties that must be carried along into socialism. Because I think there's an error to think that it is fine if under socialism there's repression, provided that you have food and everything. I don't think that's not the kind of socialism that I believe in.
All righty. We're going to pause the conversation right now for you to listen to a testimonial that was done for you. I know it's a big surprise. So here comes the testimonial. Some people were saying things that you may want to hear, especially when you're alive. So here we go with human rights lawyer and journalist of one time, Mr. Akoto Ampaw. Here comes the testimonial.
Those who must have given him the name Sheshe, which relates to the then revolutionaries, Ernesto Che Guevara, who died through his cause. That is Sheshe. I don't think that at the time when he was named Sheshe, people knew that he was so committed and he could fight for a cause to the end. That is Akoto Ampaw.
Akoto Ampaw, as Sheshe, as we all called him, was actually my senior in secondary school in St. Augustine's in Cape Coast. So I've known him since I was a teenager. And I've worked with him since the University of Ghana, when we were both student activists. He became the Secretary General of the All African Students Union. And that was a very important platform in terms of the work that Sheshe did. Subsequently, he was among people who tried to build what I call progressive political organizations in this country, so as to facilitate the participation of ordinary people in political life.
Mr. Akoto Ampaw and I have worked together in this firm, Akufo-Addo Prempeh & Co., in excess of about 23 years. And we started off working together in this office, in this particular office. Then he had his desk on my right here, and I was, a young practitioner on the left here. Mr. Akoto Ampaw presently is the fulcrum of the office. He's the go-to person in this office. His knack for detail is superb. We work from Monday to Monday. There's not a single day that you come and you won't find anybody here. And who will you find? It's likely to be Mr. Akoto Ampaw, midnight, 1 a.m. He's still here working. I remember when he was working on his book, the medial source book. He practically stayed in this office throughout the period.
People rallied to the Rawlings government, the expectation that it would pull the country up from the collapsed state. Sheshe and I were among those who very quickly parted ways with the government because we were unhappy with his policies. Subsequently, we were all arrested. Sheshe was arrested on at least 2 occasions, and together with Kwesi Pratt, Kwame Kakari, and others, were all political detainees for having disagreeing with public policy. In a certain sense, that the experience of all of us and others reflected also the absence of space for free expression, which is why the subsequent work that Sheshe has done to support the defense and expansion of media freedom as part of the wider defense of free expression, as part of the wider defense of rights, because free expression really is just one aspect of rights. And I think what is important to say about him also is that there are some people who are interested in rights in a very narrow civil liberties sense, that the freedom to speak, to move, and so on. But his understanding of the concept of rights is broad. It includes social and economic rights, and also minority rights.
He is a consummate media lawyer. Through him, this office has become the hub for media activity in this country. I can mention a couple of cases that he's been involved in. I'm sure you know the Radio Eye case which led to the liberalization of the airwaves. He was involved in that case. He's been involved in cases affecting human rights of journalists.
I mean, one of the things that Sheshe has done, for example, is written a huge, compendium on the history of legislation, on the media and free expression in Ghana. He did this work, I think, for the Media Foundation for West Africa. The Right to Information Coalition, which was a key vehicle in this struggle. He was a key driver in that coalition.
The Right to Information Law is Akoto's baby. He's worked through meeting the various activists and kept pushing and pushing and ensuring that the bill will be passed. We've seen the bill passed. So Akoto is not an ordinary person, if you ask me. Is an enigma, a gem for this country. But many people do not know him. They hear his name, Sheshe, but then working together is the impact that he's had on us as lawyers, young lawyers in this office, and people are following through with him.
Today he stands as somebody who has been consistent. He's been ready to make huge sacrifices for what he believes in. And over the years, he has remained somebody respected across the political spectrum amidst the twists and turns, of Ghanaian politics. In secondary school, Sheshe was one of the top middle distance runners for St. Augustine's College. In university, he was a top footballer for Sabah, for the university's team, and also he played in the league, I believe, for Volta United. He may even have been, doubled with Great Olympics at some point, but definitely, he played, for Volta United or Volta Stars, in the football league.
This has come at the time that it should come. And for many of us who know you, we know that it is deserved, a well-deserved recognition. I would ask Mr. Ashon to, after this program, organize a fufu with a benkwai and snails for you. Congratulations, Akishe.
Right? You like snails?
Yes.
Me too. If they invite you to come, I'll come.
Okay.
And I'll make a small portion. What do you think about all those things that Mr. Sylvia and Dr. Graham said about you?
I'm more than humbled. That's all I can say. Unbelievable. I'm not sure they are talking to me or about me.
Couple of quick points before we dash off. They talked about RTI, the Right to Information Law, being your baby. Is your baby as beautiful as you wished it would be in terms of how the law is being applied?
First of all, it's not my baby. The right to information was given birth to by a coalition of individuals and organizations that worked for the better part of 20 years for it to be attained. I think that the law itself is quite robust. What needs to be done is to ensure that those who man the Right to Information Commission are people who are truly committed to the right to information and are independent of state control, and that the Ghanaian state will provide the commission with sufficient resources for it to be able to carry out its very, very important function of education and enforcement, and most importantly, that the people of Ghana use this important democratic tool of self-empowerment to ensure accountability and then transparency in our public life. From what I've read about the work of the commission since it was established, it is doing fairly well. In 2021, they dealt with only 50 cases. In 2020, 50 cases. In 2021, they dealt with 247 cases. And out of that, 68% of the cases involved the grant of the information required. Only seven cases were refused, and the rest were referred for further thing. I think the courts also have been quite robust in enforcing the right to information. A typical case was one of Evans Mensah versus the Minerals Commission or Ministry, where he asked for the record of, I think, licenses from 2013 to 2019 or thereabouts, and the commission refused it. And the Minerals Commission refused the grant. He appealed to the RTI Commission. The RTI Commission upheld his thing. No, the Minerals Commission said that they should pay $1,000 US. The RTI Commission said no. They should pay just about 2,000, or for every page 1.5 cedis. Then they appealed again to the High Court, and the High Court upheld the position of the Commission.
Okay.
So what needs to be done is for Ghanaians to really take this potential power that they have in the RTI law and run with it.
So, yeah, great. It's interesting that Mr. Sifiko was calling a media lawyer, and recently a person who you will know pretty well was in the media for some comments, and which were judged to be treasonous. Comments that I read you saying were almost as cynical as far as the charge was concerned. I'm talking about Mr. Oliver Barker-William Vomowo. He's still your client, is he? How's that case going? We can't comment on what's happening in court, but
well, the case, they are in the process of going through the process of indictment before trial. You know, that's where it's gotten to for now, so far as I'm concerned.
You're confident that you'll be able to defend him?
Well, I don't understand that question.
Are you confident
that I'll be able to defend him?
Well,
I'll do
spare him the ultimate punishment.
Well, we shall do our very best. You know, we shall do our very best. But I personally think that the charge is needless.
The treason charge.
Yeah, it's needless, and it's like hitting how do you call it, an ant with a bazooka. You know.
Are you still the president's lawyer? You were the president's lawyer for the election petition. Are you still his lawyer now?
I don't understand the question.
You represented the president during the election
Sure,
petition.
yes.
Do you? Does he have a? What's the relation? Did they end with the election petition? That was it.
No, if for instance he needed some legal advice or assistance that he thought I could give him, I would give him. But I'm not like his retained lawyer.
You're not.
Yeah.
Okay. Some people will have a difficulty in thinking, okay, well, this man is socialist, but he's representing this gentleman who is trying to supposed to allegedly trying to overthrow this government. And then at some point also he represented the president. I mean, how do you choose your clients?
I don't choose my clients. My clients choose me.
Would you defend everybody, anybody?
Not anybody, but largely speaking, almost everybody who needs my legal, assistance.
When was the last time you turned down somebody and said, no, I can't defend you?
I don't remember.
It's never happened?
I don't think so.
Okay. Let's talk about Santofi, Akpafu, Lolobi, and Likpe. They don't have an MP.
Yeah.
Is that not where you come from?
Sure.
Central Kofi. So
I come from Lolobi.
Lolobi. Yeah. So South, you're part of the South. That's weird.
I can't.
Everybody should have an MP.
I can't understand that.
Oh, you too?
Why should I understand that?
Well, we thought there was something that people would know that we wouldn't know. I mean, why don't they have an MP?
No, but why should you think I know something that others don't know? I don't know anything.
Will it be resolved?
I hope and expect so. I hope and expect so, It's part of the Ghanaian party political shenanigans, I think,
So if it's resolved, we will have a 276th MP. Would that be?
That may be part of the problem. I don't know.
What's the latest with the LGBTQ issues that were in the news for such a long time? You were actually on our network clarifying issues about your stand, the coalition that is around to deal with this. What's the latest with that particular case?
Well, the matter is still before the parliamentary committee, and that is all I know to be the situation. On the other hand, the attacks against ordinary Ghanaians who are perceived or suspected to be LGBTQ continue without any restraint. And our police, who have a constitutional duty to protect life and property and the rights of citizens, could not be bothered. And I think that notwithstanding all the past noises made by our churches, religious leaders, and chiefs, and politicians, I think that this continuing unprovoked assault on this small minority of persons is a huge scandal that they should be held responsible for. The sponsors of the bill, the chiefs, the mosques, the churches. And by the way, you will notice that these are the same people who are attacking radio stations. Politicians, chiefs, mosques, or not mosques. They are the people who are attacking the radio stations and purporting to exercise rights to close radio stations that say things they are unhappy with, directly in violation of our constitution. I think that ought to be stated that Ghana is a republic, a democratic republic. It's not a chiefdom. We respect our chiefs They play very important roles in our society, but they do not have the power or authority to close down radio stations. And it is important that this matter does not lead to a head-on confrontation between chiefly authority and all of us who are committed to media freedom. And I think that the best way to deal with this thing is, one, for our chiefs not to purport to exercise powers that they don't have, not to engage in the illegality of purporting to close down radio stations because they say things that are unpalatable. And on the other hand, for the media houses also to be circumspect about how they moderate their programs. But for sure, no matter how circumspect media houses are, every now and again, people will say things that our chiefs will not be happy about, just as they say things that the President of the Republic, the first gentleman of our society, may not be happy about. I think this is very, very, very important. The chiefs, the political parties, and their hooligans who attack radio stations, I think that something has to be done about it. And the really pathetic aspect of this is that when these things happen, you see no response from the state as state. Maybe once in a while some noise, but practical action to defend the right to freedom of expression is lacking. And I think that that is a very, very, very serious thing. Again, the attacks on journalists, physical attacks on journalists, the threats to their lives, forcing some of them to run away, like Azure for dear life, and Efia Pokua also. I think it's scandalous.
Swale died.
And Swale, who was killed. It's inexcusable. Of course, we do not know exactly whether he was killed because of his journalistic work, but all the factors that we have, or the information we have, suggests that that is the case. And to date, our police have not been able to find the killers. I think that these things are outrageous. They shouldn't be happening under this government. You know, key members of who have played important roles in promoting media freedom and independence. And we'll call on the Ministry of Information to take up these matters, not simply by speech, but by linking up with the police, so that those who assault media personnel and their chiefs, politicians, police, and the military. These are important organs of the state, that's the chief. Chiefs, politicians, and their thugs, the police, the military, national security. They are the people who are regularly assaulting media practitioners for doing their job and ensuring freedom of expression. I think it's a big step backwards. And no wonder Ghana, in the recent index, we dropped by 30 places. We need to do better than this. And we need to protect the freedom and independence of the media and its practitioners, because it is the media that provides oxygen for democracy.
And we are privileged to have listened to you, and we want to say kudos and keep fighting for the rights of all. And the description of you being the media lawyer, I think it's apt. Thank you so much, Akoto Ampaw.
Thank you very much.
And human rights activist. Thank you so much. It's been really enjoyable. And please don't forget me when the snails land.
Oh yeah, you'll be the first,
to attack them.
Yeah, I tell you.
This is the Boom Show. Comes to you every Sunday at this time. Brought to you in partnership with the Center for Communication and Culture and supported by the Ghana Journalists Association, the Private Newspaper and Online Publishers Association, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and the Institute of Public Relations in Ghana. The Kaftan of the Political Studio was brought to you by Stallion Outlook. My name is Kafui Day. Keep watching GTV. And God willing, we'll meet again same time next week for another edition of The Boom Show, where we celebrate media excellence. God bless.